Dear friend, across the river, my hands are cold and bare. Dear friend, across the river, I'll take what you can spare. I ask of you a penny, my fortune it will be. I ask you without envy. We raised almighty towers. Our homes are built of stone. So come across the river and find the world below. Dear friend, across the river, my hands are cold and bare. Dear friend, across the river, I'll take what you can spare. I ask of you a penny, my fortune it will be. I ask you without envy. We raised almighty towers. Our homes are built of stone. So come across the river and find the world below.
All right. How are you doing tonight, man? You're on mute. There
You're
we go.
pulling the audio from Discord. Okay. Let me mute myself there then. I'm doing all right, man. Can't complain.
No problem.
Cannot complain at all.
So here we
Yeah.
are to discuss book 3.
Yeah, I'm super excited for book 3. As we were kind of talking off screen, book 3 for me is really where the story kind of picks up, and I think you put it well, Greg. You start to see the body and the foundation, the foundation of the story in the books, I should say, because there's 16 of them, were set in book 1 and book 2, and now you start to see kind of pillars. You see Rand's story, you see Perrin's story, and Matt's story, kind of really start to form. And I will say this: you would expect some. How do I put this? You'd expect stories that are this involved, but that separate this much to be very much like hard to weave together. Because I've seen that in other series, like I'm gonna take a dig at George R. R. Martin, kind of him.
Yeah.
Like some of the weaves in his stories are very loose. There's a lot of holes in there. But Robert Jordan did a really good job of making sure that the three different main stories, because there's primary and then secondary characters, but the primary characters and the overarching story and how they weave together, he did a very good job of tying those together throughout the entirety of the story. Yeah, I will say there are some weaker spots as you get in the later books. For the most part, I'd say 80 to 90% like solid, just story building throughout. And for me, book three is where the major, where you see him, as the title says, finally become the Dragon Reborn, or officially, I should say, because he always was, but now it's proclaimed to the world. But we'll get to that.
Right. Right. Well, and this story actually, book three kind of starts out slow.
It does.
Yeah, because it comes off of book two where you have the big battle in the sky over Falme,
Mhm.
and Rand gets that injury from fighting Ishmael.
Mhm.
And you defeat they defeat the, well, temporarily setback, let's say, the Siachin army. Matt blows the horn of Valir and summons
Mhm.
the
Hero,
the
300
heroes.
heroes.
Yeah.
Yep.
They save Egwene from the Siachin. And then you jump into this story. Um, and in book three, so it all starts out with Rand and Pern, um, in the mountains with Moiraine and this group of Shinarans, the Shinaran
Mhm.
warriors that had basically escorted them out to Falme.
Yeah.
Um, and they start out in the woods, essentially in the mountains of mist, and it's it's interesting because you get to see, this is where Rand starts to go from being the innocent, young man to the more dark Rand.
Y- Yeah, he kind of enters a little bit of a broody phase here. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. Yep. But at this point,
Well,
go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, at this point in the story, you have Rand, who now realizes who he is, and
Mhm.
you've got a lot of things going on because the White Cloaks have been engaged at this point, the Children of the Light.
Yep.
Um, the Siachin have been engaged at this point. You have the border kingdoms and what's going on there, but nothing really big other than this battle at Falme.
Hmm.
Nothing really big has
Yeah.
happened. You,
It's
you
like they're preparing for something. It's like that calm, almost a calm before the storm.
right, right.
Yep.
So you start out in the mountains of mist, and you've got
Mhm.
Rand, who's now this brooding young man. Yeah. um
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I think he's what, like, in the first book he was what, 17,
yeah, yeah, well,
17,
what, see,
16,
that's
17.
no, I think
No.
Rand, Matt, and Pern are 20, I think, is what
Oh,
the
okay.
what the yeah, if I remember correctly, because the idea was that the baby was born on Dragon Mount, 20 years ago.
Okay,
um
so so Gawain is this, because I remember in the book, I think you said she was either 16 or 17.
yeah, she's young.
And
Yep.
Knave is like maybe 2 years older than the three boys.
Yep.
Okay, all right, so she's the youngest out of all. Okay.
Yep. And at this point, you've also met Eleni. You've been introduced to
Mhm.
that character, which is the daughter heir of Andor, um,
Yep.
and her two
Seth.
brothers. Galad
Yep.
and Gowan.
Mhm.
Um, you've met Elias, which is kind of quasi Pern's mentor, at least with the whole wolf thing that he has going on.
That was an interesting turn, I will say that. When I first read it, I was like, "Oh, well, okay, I kind of see where this is going." He's so if I had to look at it as like archetypal characters, like Perrin kind of took on the more shamanistic, druidic aspect of the world that Tolkien built. So some of the like older nature, and I guess you could say the older, more natural aspects of the more mystical portions of the world. And then you have Matt, who's the rogue, the rogue bard kind of mix,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
living on the edge, flying by the seat of his pants, and getting lucky more often than not, which we'll actually discuss later on, probably in the episode, because he's one he's one lucky son of a bitch. I'll say that. And then you have Rand, who the main character is he's a mixed bag, especially now. And I think the reason why that you're starting to see the brooding side is, well, a couple of reasons. Number one, like you said, he's finally realized, like, yeah, I am the Dragon Reborn, and everything that comes with that.
Right.
I'm supposed to break the world, I'm supposed to save it or destroy it, and either or can happen, almost, at the drop of a hat. If things don't go perfectly, I can end up destroying the
Hmm.
world again, or saving it. So to be fair, you kind of throw that on the back of anybody. I'd be a little broody too. But then, one of the other things that I'm pretty sure we've mentioned over the last couple episodes, the Sidon, which that's no, is it Sidar or Sidon? That's the
Theoden,
male half.
Theoden and Sator.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Sidon is the male half of the one power. That's tainted by the Dark One,
Hmm.
like forever, for all men. And not only has he started to utilize the one power, so he's being exposed to that dark taint, but he also has that wound that never heals, which was given to him not by the Dark One, but by one of the Forsaken, which wield that same power.
Hmm.
So he's got an excuse. It's still
It
kind of funny to read, but he's got an excuse.
Well, and actually, there's a Ishmael, which is
Yes.
the chosen, the Forsaken, the
Yeah.
chosen that he
The
fights
Chosen. Yeah.
in the sky over Falme. Now
Mhm.
Ishmael is an interesting character because ideally in book two, um, Rand defeats him, kills him. Okay.
Yeah, I do remember that. So that's why I was kind of confused towards the end of this book, where I was like, hold on, wait a minute.
Well, and the other Forsaken, because you get that piece in here too. You get the other Forsaken and kind of what's going on behind the scenes,
Mm.
on the other side, the other team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That
they
is another thing I do like. He does give you a perspective from the dark side. Uh, not to use Star Wars in here, but like very few times have I seen in books where you do get more of an inside look at what's going on the bad guy side of things.
right,
You
right.
know, usually if you're seeing what's going on, it's because a main character from, I guess what we classify the good side, is interacting with them. Either they've been captured, or there's an interaction where one of the main characters or the main character is there, and sometimes the villain or one of their cronies is monologuing or some shit. But very rarely do you get to just step into the shoes of one of the bad guys and kind of see, okay, this is what they're doing.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I really like about this
Mm.
series and about Robert Jordan's writing style, is that he tells the story from multiple perspectives, and not just the main characters either. I mean, he also
Yeah.
tells the story from some of the supporting roles that come into play.
Yep.
Um, And that's phenomenal that he does that, because it gives you it makes the world feel more alive, more real, because you get that opportunity to see all the different angles of what is happening. um so now the group at this point has been split up as well. So you have Matt, who is with Eleni, Nynaeve, and Varen, the Aes Sedai.
Mm.
And then you have Perrin, however you want to say it, and Rand, who is with Moiraine and these Shenarans. Um, one really, when it comes to Ishmael, not to back up too much on this, but one key point here is the Ishmael of all the Chosen, and this is revealed through those conversations that the Chosen are having kind of behind the scenes. The Ishmael is considered the most insane one out of the group, because he, in their opinion, he seems to think that he is the Dark One.
Mm.
And so that comes, later on in the series. There's more about that, but as of right now, it appears that Ishmael is dead. And Rand's kind of a burgeoning psychopath. I don't know, maybe something like that. But they're in the Mountains of Mist. Rand has there's an event that happens. They get attacked in the middle of the night, and you have Lan's also there with Moiraine. They get attacked in the middle of the night. They're fighting for survival. They manage to win over these Trollocs and whatnot that attack them. And then the next morning, Rand takes off. Doesn't say anything to anybody. He just leaves and starts heading on his way. He's wherever he's going. And of course, then the Moiraine and Pern and Lan take off after him. Now the Shenarans stay behind. There's an interesting story that starts to develop there, because one of the key characters in the books is a character called the Prophet. You remember who the Prophet is? I won't.
Mind me.
That'd be a little bit of a spoiler, so I won't go there. But
Okay.
the Prophet begins in this book, but isn't really talked too much about. There's just kind of a rumor thing that's going on, because this guy who's out there supposedly gathering forces for the Dragon Reborn. So Rand takes off, heading somewhere, and for the most part, he's really not sure where he's going. He's just trying to get away from everybody, because in his mind, him being with these people puts them in danger. So he's trying to escape that, trying to run off. And along the way, he meets some interesting characters. He meets a group of dark friends that decide to try and kill him along the road. And that doesn't work out too well for them. And here he actually ends up. Rand develops this thing about killing females, killing women. In one of the first really dramatic scenes where he ends up being more or less responsible for the death of a woman is a noble woman that has a group of thugs basically with her. She's a dark friend, and they find him along the road, and he ends up having to kill these people and this. So you got that piece. The story, so the story kind of splits up a little bit more here, because you have Rand by himself who's making this journey. And where he's going, he doesn't know where he's going, but where he's going is Tyr. Okay, the nation of Tyr, which is essentially on the other side of the continent. and then you have Moraine, Lan, Pern, who are trying to track him, trying to chase him down, catch him before he does something stupid or somebody kills him, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so you have that story of Rand that's developing, but then there's a lot more spent in this book about the story of Perrin and this wolf dream, this wolf power, this kinship that he has with wolves.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you also have Eleni and you have Nynaeve going back to the White Tower, and this is where now Rand has already met Eleni, but Nynaeve, Egwene, they have not. But they meet Eleni because the daughter heir and the first prince of the sword, which is Eleni's brother, have
Hmm.
to do a stint in the White Tower. So they
Yeah.
end up going to Tarvalon, and they end up getting there essentially the same time that that Egwene and Nynaeve and Matt show up. Now Matt at this point is still suffering from they got the dagger back when they got the horn. Matt blew the horn, but at this point he's still under the influence of this dagger from
Yeah.
Shader
The
Logoth.
shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Remind me why, because I can't remember exactly why her Elaine's brother. Is it Elaney or Elaine? Because I always said Elaine.
I just
I guess it's just it's up
I
to
think it's
each reader.
Eleni. Yeah. But
Yeah, it's up to
Elaine's
each.
fine. That works.
But
I
is there a
guess I
reason
could
why
turn to
her
the back of the
brother?
book and see what the pronunciation really is supposed to be, but yeah.
Eh, yeah, eventually I'll do that. But why does her brother go with her? Unless because I can't remember. Is he trying to become like a warder,
Well,
or is he? Go ahead.
both of the brothers go, Galad and Gowan. And Gowan goes because Gowan is the first prince of the sword. So he's not going
Oh,
there to be a warder. He's going there to learn from the quote unquote best, learn from the warders. Because
okay.
his role in life is essentially to protect the future queen, which is his sister.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
Um, Galad at this point is a little lost. I mean, he's the stepson, the stepbrother. His
That's
father,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and his father was royalty from Kerheen, and that's how they have their connection to Kerheen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he's not Morgus Tracken's son. Morgus
Hmm.
Tracken's stepson. Morgus Tracken is the queen of Andor, the mother of Eleni and Gowan. So Galad and Gowan go to the tower to train, essentially. Um, and then they all meet. They go with Eleni to the tower, and they end up meeting Egwene and Nynaeve. Um, and that's where you really get your first real introduction to the 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 Aes Sedai, as a body, and
Yeah.
Camlin, which is um, Camlin and Tarvalon are big beautiful cities.
Yeah,
Um,
think Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings, big, especially when you go to Tarvalon, like it's, the white spear of, the I can't remember the name of it, but like that white spear that sits in the middle of the city, and then the two bridges that cross either end. Because Tarvalon, the city, I'm pretty sure it's like in the middle of like a lake or something.
yep, it's in the middle of a
Yeah.
river, an island in the middle
Yeah,
of a
there we go.
river, the
Yeah,
river
so it's like
Arnon, I think it is.
they're beautiful, beautiful cities, especially Tarvalon. At least that's they describe. They're like the seats of Tarvalon, especially the seats of like political. I don't want to say political power, but in a way, yeah. They're like the seats of political power on this part of the continent
Mhm.
because I mean you have the Aes Sedai who are you know advisors to king and queen, so they hold a lot of weight
Yeah, and
at
well,
this. political bullshit that goes on there.
They have this, they have access to this world's equivalent of magic.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, they magic definitely changes the dynamic.
when you start to learn about the tower itself, and how that's all happening. Now Eleni and Egwene have already been to the tower and then taken out of the tower by Lilindril, the red Aes Sedai.
Yeah, I think it's Leandrin.
Yeah,
I think is her
Leandrin.
name.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when they, when they ended up getting turned over to the um Sietchin, essentially. But now they're back. They come with Vern and they get back to the tower. They end up having to evade the White Cloaks, the Children of the Light, on their way. Um,
Mm.
which is interesting because they get to meet Giafram Bornhold's son, um, and this bear bar, whatever his name is. He's another one of the White Cloaks, but they at the time are traveling with Eamon Valda, which is a high ranking Lord Captain, or Captain Commander in the Children of the Light. And not a very nice dude.
Yeah. That is one thing that you do see a lot of is, especially with the children of the light, they are not shy about doing some greasy ass shit, man.
No,
So,
they.
not all of them, not all of them, some of them.
Well, they are. The easiest way for me is they're kind of like the Spanish Inquisition. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're but they use their supposed righteousness to further their own goals a lot of times, their own power in essence. Um, up to this point, you've started to learn a lot about Hadron Nile. Hadron Nile is at this point the Lord Captain Commander of the Children of the Night. He's also the Light. Sorry, not Night. He's also considered a great commander. Um, and rightly so. I mean, he's led the Children of the Light to great victories and all that stuff. We got them. They're established in Emidacia, where their home base is, and they're considered a power in the land.
Mm.
You find them all over the damn place. But at this
Yeah.
point, the Children of the Light are trying to make a play for growing their own power, essentially trying to get themselves set up well in Terabon, and in Altera, which are two kingdoms in the south, um, that, yeah, they're not super stable at this point. Amidacia is probably the only real stable power in the area, and predominantly that's because it's the seat of power for the Children of the Light. Um, but yeah, so you get Perrin. I know Perrin is like one of your favorite characters, isn't he?
Uh, I mean, I like all of them. I think honestly, my favorite character is probably going to be, aside from Rand, only because he is the main character, is probably going to be, if I had to order them, it'd probably be Rand, Matt, and then Perrin. Perrin, for him, for me, he's a kind of a mixed bag,
Mm-hmm.
only because number one, I don't like his wife.
You don't like Fail?
No, she's a pain in the ass. um, and I don't know, I was whole wolf thing was like, I guess. But yeah, I mean, again, like you have Rand, Rand is who he is. He's Dragon Reborn. He has all, this access to all that power. And you have Matt, who I'm pretty sure his power is just fucking luck at this point. Like he's got the god of luck on his side because yeah, he's wild. But Perrin really comes into his own uniqueness now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when he develops as a brother of the wolf or whatever the hell that shit is called. Basically, he's able to communicate with wolves, call them, communicate with them, and in his own way. Well, actually, Greg, you might know the answer to this.
Hmm.
Dreamwalkers and those who are, because there is a certain
Tell.
term for what Perrin is, isn't
Um,
there? I can't
I
remember it off the top of my head.
No, I don't think for Perrin, I don't think there is really a term. They don't see, you know what I mean? All the way through the books, I mean, most of the people you only meet him and Elias. And
Yeah.
well, you meet one more, which you actually meet in this book. And they don't really have a term for what he is. It's, they kind of speak to, the ancient legends of men who could speak to beasts and stuff like that. Um, but you don't really see. I kind of look at it as being talents. I mean, because Pern has his talent, which is the wolf brother, basically. I mean, that's what else do you call it? Matt has
Yeah.
his talent, which is his luck. And then
Incredible luck.
right, and then you have Min who has her talent. I mean,
Yep.
she can essentially see. She has very strong premonitions about people. She can see images floating around them that speak to
See their
what
aura.
right
Yeah.
speak to what's going to happen to them in their life. Um,
Mhm.
which, if you think about it, that's pretty disturbing power to have.
Yeah,
I mean,
I honestly, if I had that power, I'd probably never leave my room. Because again, you can tell when people are gonna die, the manner in which they're probably gonna, like, obviously, what she sees is not always a specific thing. It's different for everybody. But like, nah, I wouldn't want to see. No, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna be a hermit.
exactly. Um, so, all right, you get this going on. So now I want to focus on Pern for just a moment,
Yeah.
because he meets Tom. No, anyway, they meet another wolf brother as they're traveling, and they come in.
Yes.
They come into one of these small towns. Now, weird stuff is happening. That's how they're able to track Rand, because as Rand travels along this path, you get these villages where suddenly there's this pile of marriages. You get
Uh huh.
the you know
This guy finds piles of bags of gold in his like garden or something, like buried in his garden.
right, right,
Um, and then I think the one you're talking about, the village, is the Wolf brother is a grown man, but he's kind of unlike Elias and Perrin. He kind of got stuck with on the wolf side of things.
yes,
Um, so is like the mentality and manner, like basically a wolf in a human body. Essentially, it's kind of what it boils down to.
right, yeah.
Um,
He's not there. Basically,
yeah.
Moiraine, when she has a chance to examine him, is like, yeah, this is no longer a man. This is
Mhm.
a wolf in a man's
Yeah.
body, essentially.
No,
Um,
so yeah, and it's interesting because it again it ties back to the whole Tavarine piece of the three of them,
mhm,
because even like they're all nexuses of strange and unusual and powerful things wherever it is they go. Like things move around them instead of them having to move around the pattern, as it's called.
right,
So it's real. It is cool to see that he reinforces that often often in subtle ways, but then you have these very kind of standout moments where it's like, okay, yeah, they're the reason why all this shit's happening.
Right. Right. So, and at this time, you also, I mean, you've met Celine,
Yes.
which is another one of the Forsaken that was, she was a lover of the actual dragon, Louis Silliman. Um, so you met her on the way. Okay, so a couple things happen to Pern. One, he meets this wolf in a man's body, which kind of freaks him out a little bit because he's like, oh man, is that what's going to happen to me, kind of thing. Um,
Mhm.
because he's
Yeah,
just
he gets to see the possibilities.
right, and he's just getting, he's just starting to figure some things out, and he's scared. I mean, rightly so.
Shit, I
Um,
would.
well, yeah, I mean, suddenly you can talk to wolves. I mean, your eyes turn golden. You can talk to wolves, and you can do things that you couldn't do before. Smell
Mm-hmm.
things, see further, all that kind of stuff.
Then like I did notice one thing. It goes kind of like parts of this whole kind of wolf brother thing goes counter to who Perrin is. I mean, put aside the fact that it's fucking weird, it's
Mhm.
new, it's magical in a sense, but it goes counter to who Perrin is because remember, you know, when we're introduced to Perrin, he's described as someone who, like a lot of people that don't know him, think he's like kind of slow, and it's not because he's mentally or even physically slow. It's because he's aware of his size, his strength, and he's a gentle giant. But
Mhm.
this changing into a wolf brother and utilizing those aspects to and kind of delving deeper into that, you'll see that he's not so gentle or nice anymore, especially to his enemies.
Right, right.
Like I mean, he gets pretty vicious, and I like the contrast, um, as the stories, because again, all of this, like book three, kind of is further setting the stage for the rest of the story. I think this for me, book three is definitely the first step of uh, the rest of the story and who they become, the things that they do, stuff like that. And that this piece with Elias and the other wolf brother and them following after Rand and telling their own stories is, I think, this one's parents.
And well, it's, I mean, all three. Well,
Yeah,
Perrin, um,
and Matt for sure.
yeah, and so the other thing that happens with Perrin is he also encounters Gull, so which is an ale now, and
Ah, yeah, yeah.
what happens is as they're traveling, they come upon this village, small town, basically, and there's in the square there's a man in a cage, who's stuck in this cage, and apparently these hunters of the horn, were the ones who captured this ale. And of course they told a big story because you got a large group of men who are part of this group of hunters of the horn, and they're out doing their thing, and they run across this ale, and they get the idea in their head that they're gonna kill this ale savage. And the ale ends up taking out like all but two of them, and before they finally subdue him, and capture him, and they put him in this cage in the town square. Um, Hearn, of course, is curious, so at night he goes out to find out who is this man that's trapped in this cage, and he meets Gull. Well, at the same time, there's a group of white cloaks, a group of children of the light who are in the area, and this is Pern's first encounter with the children of the light. And he ends up killing two of them, and setting Gull free, which is interesting because this starts out something new for these guys, where now Gull, um, because of Jayato, he owes his life to Pern, and he has to pay that debt. So
Mhm.
now Gull ends up traveling with Perrin, um, and Moraine and Lan. They have to leave in the night because everything now, obviously, if you just killed two children of the light, you time to leave town, get the hell out of here. Um, and at that point, there's a few other little things that happen, nothing extremely of note there, but they end up in Tyr,
Mm.
um, headed for the Stone of Tyr. So I gotta stop right there for a moment and switch over to the White Tower in the situation with Matt.
Yeah.
So they get Matt separated from this dagger, which is a big deal. Um,
Yeah. They have to
now,
do like a pretty, from what I remember, it was a pretty powerful ritual
yeah,
to get him kind of separated from the thing.
yep, to get him separated from this dagger, and then get him healed up. So you see this story unfolding, which is in the White Tower. You get to, because Min's there with them in the White Tower. Menindril, I think, is what her real name is.
Hmm.
And you get to see what they're doing in the White Tower. Um, One of the interesting things that comes up while they're there is they begin to realize that there's something wrong. There's something wrong in the ranks of the Aes Sedai. And the Amerlin doesn't have a lot of choices as to handle the situation. So she decides to take these two accepted at that point. So when you first go into the White Tower, you become a novice, which you're I that's a weird situation because you're treated like a child, and you don't know anything, yada yada yada. It's almost kind of slavery in a way. But
Yeah, and it's definitely strange because again, all the type of women that they admit, into that program. I mean, Elaine is a princess,
Mhm,
an heir to a kingdom,
mhm,
and again, she's kind of knocked down a peg back to, yeah, you ain't shit now. So it's
right.
it's definitely, I can kind of only imagine like what you're thinking at that point. If you come from royalty or if you come from importance, now you ain't shit. So
Right.
it's probably kind of a kick in the teeth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Um, and you also get to see, so you have Galad and Gowan. At this
Mhm.
point, you also start to see um, a little bit of a relationship begin to kindle. Because Egwene, who at this point has realized that, yeah, Rand is probably not the guy, um, she is completely taken with Gowan, Eleni's brother, her younger brother.
Yeah, this the stepbrother.
No, no, no. Galad,
How many
Galad,
brothers do you have?
just the two. Not the stepbrother. Actually, Gowan is actually Eleni's brother. Galad is the stepbrother.
Oh, Gal. Okay, Gal is okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
and all the women are taken with Galad because he's the honorable. He's really really good with weapons, and
Mm.
um
He's a knight. The typical good-looking, martial prowess kind of guy. Yeah.
right. So while they're in the tower, they get Matt healed. Um, Varen gives Egwene a particular item. It's a dream Tyrangreel. It's basically like a little medallion, a little ring that they tie around their neck, and it allows them to enter the world of dreams, which is called Teleranrod.
Mm.
Um,
And that's another thing. Dreamwalkers are extremely rare too.
right, right.
Like they're not very common.
It's a little odd when you because this how this happens in Varen giving her this Tyrangreel is kind of sus. It's kind of sus, really is. It's really
Yeah,
suspicious
that's
as
like,
to
wait a minute. I'm not. I'm just. I think at this point they're like a step above novice, right?
yeah,
They've
they're
accepted.
accepted at this point. Yeah, yep,
Yeah, it says like I'm still at the bottom of the totem pole. What the fuck you giving me this shit for? It's like giving the private the launch codes to nuclear weapons.
right, right. Well, and they have figured out that the Black Jaw is real at
Hmm.
this point because there's a group of sisters that there's a couple of Aes Sedai were killed, and a group of sisters left the tower. So without anybody to go to, the Amerlin seat, which is a woman by the name of Suan Sanchez, recruits these two accepted, Nynaeve and Eleni. Um, and she ends up with Nynaeve, Egwene, and Eleni. Three accepted, sorry. She ends up recruiting these ladies to essentially hunt the Blackjaw. Um, and she sends them away from the tower to do this. They end up getting captured by the Blackjaw and held in the Stone of Tyr. So you have Nynaeve, Eleni, Egwene, all being held in the Stone of Tyr by these dark friends that are Aes Sedai. And the reason they're there is because one of the accepted one of the Forsaken is also there, and they're essentially waiting for Rand to show up because the one of the first pieces of the prophecy is this sword that's not a sword that's housed in the Stone of Tyr, Kalador. And part of the prophecy is that that's the hailing of the Dragon Reborn is when the sword that's not a sword is finally removed from the heart of the stone by the Dragon Reborn. So that's what ends up happening is Rand ends up going to the Stone of Tyr, and on the night that they arrive, okay, so on the night that they arrive, it just so happens that the Blackjaw is there. They have captured Egwene, Nynaeve, Lainey, and of course Matt goes to rescue them, and try to rescue them. At this point, he's already kind of met with um, some of the Illuminators, so he's figured out some explosives at this point, which is interesting.
Yeah, given that kid fucking explosives knowledge. Come on now.
Exactly. And they end up and the Ale have come over the dragon wall searching for the Karakarn, which is the Dragon Reborn.
Yep.
And
He
this
who comes with the dawn.
right, he who comes with the dawn, and all these things come together at the same time. So the Ale take the fortress that cannot fall, the Stone of Tyr, which is this massive fortress that appears to be made out of one solid piece of stone. Is the way it's described. It's power forged fortress basically.
Yeah.
And it's huge. It's like a big city within a city. It's got its own docks and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And while this is going on, you have Rand, who is also trying to sneak into the Stone of Tyr. You have the Ale, who are basically taking it from the defenders. And then you have Matt, who's trying to break in and save the girls, essentially. He's, trying to be the hero, although he insists that he's not a hero. So all those things going on. I'm going to stop right there. What do you got? What do you think about this so far? Where we're at?
Uh, that for me was the coolest part. Like when you finally get to meet the ale, and like I said off screen, they remind me of freaking Fremen. You can't convince me otherwise. They're damn Fremen, okay? I said what I said. But I like them because they play a very pivotal role in the prophecy. Um, for reasons that you find out, over the course of the books,
Right.
both about Rand. I think they've mentioned it already, right? That either Dragon Reborn was born to a woman, right? I think that's already been mentioned in the books, like during prophecy.
No, at this point, Rand is still struggling with what his dad, Tame Althor,
Mm,
said when he was delirious. He's still
yeah,
struggling with that. He doesn't really know who his father is. He doesn't know what his story is. Um, he just knows that Tam is not actually his father. And it's in this book where he makes the decision is within himself that no matter what else I hear or what the truth is, Tam is my father. It's in this book that he makes that determination.
yeah, and despite his kind of brooding turn, you do see the him grow up as an individual. Like he grows, like again with what you just said, he grow. You see a bit of maturity in Rand, where he's like, it is what it is. But that is my dad.
Right.
It's good that he survives too. um, but I like the taking of Tyr and everything that kind of comes with it, because you do get introduced to a number of other characters. Um, unfortunately, you'll get introduced to one of my favorite characters. Yeah, she comes later. Um, but you get introduced to Ale and you know who they are, and you get to start seeing what's on the, because again, I think it's not the spine of the world. The Oasis on the other side. I can't remember that mountain range that separates them, but you like basically the Oasis is almost. It's not like forbidden. It's not like there's nothing out there, but people don't go out.
Right.
Like people don't go out into the ale waste. They don't. They civilized individuals stay on the other. On our side of the mountains. The ale waste is on the other side. But you get to see that culture and kind of what you get to start beginnings of that culture and what comes from that.
Yep.
And um and again, you had a kind of an introduction with Gaul, who is an ailman, and you get really introduced to, hey,
Yeah,
what's up,
Infinity.
Infinity Core? Yeah, yeah, we're talking about the Dragon Reborn. Everything starts picking up, man. But like for me, the thing that was the coolest for me, especially when I was reading this as a young kid, was their fighting style. Like these guys were just beating everybody's ass
Right. Right.
all the
Hand to hand
time.
combat.
And just whooping people's ass. And you find out that they use. I'm pretty sure they use blades, but their primary weapons are shield and spear, or just dual spears, and they're
Yeah.
like short
A
spears.
hide buckler. Hide buckler. So
Yeah.
just a little round spear, just a little round shield that really fits
Mhm.
in the palm of your hand. You know.
Yeah, but like it's just really, that was one of the things that I found really cool about them. And then you also figure out that they almost all of them look like Rand in some way. Not like that they look exactly like him, but you see a lot of red hair, a lot of like light like green, gray eyes, you know, paler skin. Like you start to see the connection kind of between them.
Right.
So I think
Right.
that was part of my favorite part about, like, when you start seeing, when the story gets to Tyr and you start seeing the interactions there.
Exactly. And you meet. There's a couple. You meet some new key characters here as well because you meet Avinda,
You do?
Yeah, she's part of the Tardad Ale that take the Stone of Tyr. So she's a
I'm
maiden at
like
this
towards
point.
the first like half of the book, so I haven't finished the whole book, but
Okay. Well,
uh,
that's yeah,
uh,
you're getting a little spoiler there.
okay, I mean, again, I've read all these
Yep.
books up to like book 10, so this stuff is bringing back memories.
Yep.
Um, I thought she didn't come in until the book till
No,
the next book.
she
But
comes in this book.
makes sense.
So you meet Avenda, you meet Rourke, which is the clan chief of the
Yes.
Tardadale. You also meet Ames and some of the other wise ones, which actually
Mm,
are very prevalent throughout the rest of the books. Um, so that and you meet them. Okay, so you don't meet the wise ones in the Stone of Tyr. You meet Rourke, you meet Avenda, a few others.
mm,
Celine is one of the maidens that you end up meeting here as well.
yeah.
Um, and you meet some key characters from Tyr itself, some of the High Lords, like High Lord Werriman, um, Darlin, and some of those folks.
Mm,
Um, and Rand, when because he takes the Stone of Tyr, he also, he gets Kalendor, and this is his first use of Kalendor, in where he starts to learn some limits to his power, because the Stone of Tyr ends up getting attacked, like a full blown, bunch of
yeah.
barges come in full of Trollocs, and they try to destroy, basically kill Rand and everybody else that they can. And this is where he gets more or less established as the quasi king of Tyr. Um,
Mm,
because and where he figures out some of the limits to his power, because literally he tries to, there's this young girl who ends up getting killed in the fighting, and Moraine tries to explain to him that you can heal most things, but you can't heal
but dead is
death.
dead.
Right.
Yeah.
and
Like, yeah.
and he feeling all this power, he's like, well, I can do, I feel like I can do anything, and he tries to bring this girl back from the dead.
Yep.
Obviously it doesn't work, but that's a
Uh, there's limits to everything, and even in like the Age of Legends, death was final.
Mhm.
Like if although to be fair, like if the person was on death's door and they were all jacked up, you could probably heal them if you were strong enough. But once they crossed over, that was it. But yeah, I do like that they for me it was kind of a callback to the prologue in book one, when Lewis Theron finds his daughter, or no, finds Elena,
Yeah, his wife.
kind of, yeah, laid out on the stone after he killed her. That kind of was for me, it felt like a small callback to that for him, um, and a learning moment
Absolutely.
where he figured out, okay, well, yeah, I have all this power, but there are just some things that are final, even with the one power. Um, but yeah.
Well, at this point, Rand and Egwene and all of them are essentially back together. And they end up going into the waste, because that's the the ale are the people of the dragon. Okay, is the idea that's here in the Rand is kind of learning about their culture and their prophecy. Um, and the idea of he who comes with the dawn. So they end up traveling into the waste. They have to go to a place called Ryodan, which is essentially an ancient city in the Ale Waste. And along the way, they start to learn these stories about the culture, who the Ale are, and the story of Rand, and the story of Rand's parents, which is a super unique story that I absolutely love. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about it because, hey,
Yeah, no,
why not?
go
But
go ahead. I mean, it's pretty pivotal to the story and to the prophecy.
right. Well, and what you find out is, Rand's mother was actually Karhenian, and she, and she was a Karhenian like princess.
Hmm.
Um, and
He is of noble birth.
yeah, well, and his father is a clan chief among the Ale.
Hmm.
But anyway, this woman wanders off into the Ale waste without any real, there's no real reason why, but she wanders off into the Ale waste, and they find her and they take pity upon her because she, even being on death's door, she's still fierce, still ready to, give it all she's got, fight them,
Yep.
fight for what she doesn't really know why, but she knows that she's supposed to be here. So she ends up living among the Ale and becoming a maiden of the spear.
Hmm.
Um,
Which
and
is a big deal because they don't like outsiders aren't necessarily very welcome in Ale society.
no, no, they're not. Um, in that story, she ends up marrying this, or well, being the wife of this Ale chief, clan chief, and gets pregnant. And at that point, they had signed. There was a deal between the Carhenian and the Ale, where the Carhenian were the only ones allowed to cross the Ale waste, and they had such a good relationship between the two that the Ale had actually given the Carhenian a branch from Avendisor, which is the tree of life. And that branch was growing in the city of Carrion, the capital city of the lands of Carrion. And the king decided to cut the tree down to make himself a throne. Um,
Of course he fucking would, asshole.
well, and correspondingly, the Ale viewed that as breaking the treaty, the oath breaker, breaking the oath. So that's what they, this king became the oath breaker, and it's what prompted the Ale War, which was essentially four clans of the Ale went into Carheen specifically to kill this king. That was their whole purpose, was just to kill this king. But it ended up being this major war between most of the armies of the world trying to fight off the Ale, which they sucked at. I mean, they weren't able to
Yeah.
stop them.
Yeah, like I said, the Ale are the fucking Fremen in this world
Yeah.
because they were just that much better warriors, and they're deadly, man. Absolutely deadly.
During this battle, essentially, when the Ale, the end of it, the Ale kill the king, and Rand's mother dies in childbirth, giving birth to Rand.
Mm,
Tam Althor is a blade master, but
mm,
he's a soldier for Ilion at the time, the king of Ilion,
yeah.
and fighting against the Ale, and he comes across this dead maiden with this infant child. So he picks up the infant child and takes the child back, basically adopts the child rather than let it stay out there and freeze
Die.
to death. Right,
Yeah.
right. And at the same time, the Ale retreat back into the waste. They've done what they came to set out to do. They set out to kill this king. They've killed the
They
king.
did it.
They leave.
Time to go.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
That's actually one thing that I like about them. It's like they have a very strict honor code, and they're the people of their word. They keep their word. But yeah, clearly, like again, like you said, they went there. They did what they came there to do, and they left. They weren't there to try to steal riches or anything like that.
right.
They had a purpose. They did it. And they went home. Which is definitely counter to every other army depicted in the in the series. Like everybody, well, we're gonna take this town as now our town. You know, like, no, we got a home. It's over that way.
Right.
We just came to kick your ass, and we did it. Now we're going home.
Right.
Um, so it's interesting. And here's the thing, though, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And this is another reason why I feel like, in this instance, Jordan took some inspiration from Dune, because it. So a couple of parallels that I've seen is, Paul Atreides went to Arrakis
Mhm.
and pulled the Fremen out of Arrakis. That was basically his prophecy, as the Lisan Galib was to bring them out of Arrakis, or, well, bring them out of Arrakis, but also turn Arrakis back into a paradise.
Mhm.
That's here nor there. But in a way, Rand did kind of the same thing with the Ale. He pulled them out of the Ale waste
Mhm.
in a way. So
Right.
that's why it's like, again, feels like there's some similarities there. Which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It was just interesting to realize, because I didn't realize it when I was a kid. I realized it only after getting back into the series now as an adult, where I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I didn't I missed that the first time.
I think maybe some loose parallels. I mean,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to the Fremen, there may have been some inspiration there.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, that's not a bad thing. Like, the Fremen are cool characters, and,
right.
again, the Ale, while, again, like you said, loose parallels, but they're distinctly different.
So
Distinctly different.
so who's the Spacing Guild or the
Well, we
obviously the Bene Gesserit would be like
yeah,
the
I
Aes
should
Sedai,
I, yeah, yeah,
right?
the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Is that the chosen? I don't know. They're kind of evil,
Eh,
I think, personally.
yeah, they're kind of, yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah, I can see the Spacing Guild
Or
probably
maybe they're
being
the Trollocs. They've been.
the.
um, but yeah, so they head off into the waste and they meet some traders in the waste. Um, and they end up at Ryodan. So they're this is when they get to Ryodan is where things really kind of start to change. Because to be a clan chief, you have to, or to be a wise one, even you have to make this trip into this forbidden city, Ryodan, and go through this certain tearing grail. Okay. Um, so of course they get Rand and Matt out there. And at this point, Pern has met Fail and decided to go back to the Two Rivers. Him and Gull, and of course, Gull. You also so on that front with Pern, you have Gull, who is the one who feels that he owes a debt to Pern. Um, Fail, which is a hunter of the horn, which later on becomes Pern's wife, as you pointed out earlier. Um, she has an interesting story, which we'll get to, not this episode, later on when it actually comes into the books more. But you also meet two new characters on that front, and that's two maidens of the spear named Bane and Chad. And Bane and Chad are I love the dynamic that was created here, because essentially there's a little bit of a, so Gaul is very interested in Chad. Basically, he's in love with this maiden of the spear. Well, but Bane and Chad are spear sisters, and the idea is in the Ale culture is that men don't propose to the women. The man's role in this is to entice the woman to the point where she will make a bridal wreath and lay it at his feet. So that's Gull's trying to get, he's doing everything he can to try and get, in his own way, Ale way, to get Chad to like him. And so of course, and of course she does. They do. But Bane and Chad decide to travel with Pern, since Gull's with Pern, and they go back to the Two Rivers, this little foursome. which is where Rand and Pern and Matt and Egwene all in Nynaeve all came from, the two.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Rand and Matt, Nynaeve, Egwene, Moiraine, and Lan go with the Ale into the Ale Waste, and they haven't actually met the merchants yet. They go to Ryodan. When they get there, they meet the Shadu Ale. So you have the Tardet Ale who are camped outside of Ryodan, and you have the Shadu Ale that are camped outside of Ryodan. And you meet a couple of interesting characters because the Shadu Ale lost their clan chief, and they just sent in there's brothers. I forget what the brother who went into Ryodan to be the clan chief. I forget what his name is. But then you have Kaladin, who is the younger brother, and then you have Savannah, which is his wife. Actually, she's the wife of the clan chief. So she's the wife of the older brother. But when they get there, this older brother has been in Ryodan too long. So essentially, they know that he's not coming back out. He's basically going to die in there. And that's part of the rite of passage to be a clan chief, is to be able to go in, learn what you need to learn, and then be able to come back out. And if you don't come back out, it means you weren't strong enough to be a clan chief. So Rand and Matt now knows, because they went into a Ingriel in the Stone of Tyr, and they were told that they needed to go to Ryodan. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Both Matt did it without anybody else's knowing. He just decided that he wanted to do that. Find out what his future is, whatever. Meet the Aelfin,
Yeah.
all this stuff.
And he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm down for an adventure.
Yeah. So both Rand and Matt and Moiraine went through this Turing Grail and learnt about their future, in essence. Okay, or part of it. And what Matt was told was that he, essentially that he was going to marry the daughter of the Nine Moons. And that because after this illness with the dagger, he's got holes in his memory. He can't remember anything. And this odd thing starts to happen to him where he starts to speak in the old tongue. And he doesn't understand the words that he's saying. He, in his mind, it's just common, it's English, but everybody around him hears him speaking in the old tongue. So anyway, they all three go in there. This is where that piece of the prophecy begins, where Rand figures out, okay, you've got to go to Ryodan. Matt figures out, okay, yeah, you got to go to Ryodan, and Moiraine finds out, okay, yeah, you got to go to Ryodan. Okay, so they all get out here. Kaladin makes a half-hearted attempt to kill the Wetlanders. And of course the Tardad Ale are there to make sure that doesn't happen, and the Wise Ones are there. And so all three of these go, Moiraine's task is to essentially strip down naked and run into the city. And her and Avinda are both sent in to Ryodan. They have to strip down naked because they have to go before this thing completely stripped naked, stripped bare. So in they go. Matt and Rand both go in essentially together to do their thing. Different purposes, but together. I'm not going to tell you what they find out in there. This book is, in my opinion, probably, if not the best, it's close to the best book out of the series, because you get
I agree.
all of these things coming together, and it really kind of kicks off the larger plot to the story. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there. So what do you think so far?
Like I said, I think yeah, this is for me is one of my favorite books because you get to like you said, you get to see a lot of things kicking off, a lot of things kicking off, and you first of all you get to see Rand really start using the one power, which I think is fucking awesome. I think it's cool
Mhm.
because eh, he starts, and the thing is he starts using abilities that are clearly stated to be abilities that almost no one could use, or it's very rare now, but he's just kind of doing it instinctually, and they're extremely like there's stuff out of the Age of Legends, like opening, I think they call it portals or gates or whatever. I know he opens one in Tyr when he goes after I think it's when he goes after Ishmael or one of the other Forsaken that come, like he beats him, and then he runs, and Rand like opens up a portal to chase after him.
Mm,
Um,
not
and
exactly.
then no, okay, I
No,
think I'm
no. Well,
misremembering.
no. What happens in the Stone of Tyr is he actually physically crosses over from the normal world into the dream world physically.
Ah, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what. And then you get Balefire, which is honestly my favorite thing.
Mhm.
just just fucking delete them out of existence. You're gone, as though you never were. um, but yeah, for me the overall story for this is I like that the main story is developing, but each of the you see your now you're seeing each of the characters start to develop and stepping into who they're supposed to be, like Perrin, Rand, Matt, even the supporting characters like Elaine and Egwene, Nynaeve, Moraine and Lan. You they like, and that's another thing that I really like is that he doesn't leave these characters behind.
Right,
He doesn't leave none of the characters behind. Everybody gets their kind of moment and are connected to the story when they need to be.
right.
And again, he's very consistent with that throughout the books.
Well, and a lot of these characters have a life cycle throughout the story.
Yes.
It's not everybody lives to the end, kind of thing.
No.
But
Yeah, and that's what I like. Like, not everybody lives, or I mean, not even to say they die. It's just they come into the story when they need to be there, and then they leave when it's
right,
time to go.
right,
And I think that's really that's not something you see as much with modern writing.
right,
You have your core cast of characters that kind of stick throughout the whole story, and either one of the main characters gets killed off, to set, to remind people of the stakes, or like a beloved supporting character gets killed off, again for that same reason. But it's it's very rarely where you see, you know, s- usually it's just the same cast of characters. You don't see people popping in and out.
right.
Um, and typically the supporting characters are not very well developed,
So
in my opinion.
in okay, so in Rioden they learn a bunch of secrets. Basically, they learn about the past of the Ale and the Aes Sedai. And this is where Matt gets his medallion. Um, so Matt ends up getting he gets hung. That's one thing. Gets
Yep.
hung.
But
Gets
yeah, he I'm sorry. Matt just keep getting his ass beat.
well. The
He
oddity
keep
to it
getting the
is
short end of the stick.
but he gets hung from the tree of life. Did you realize that?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Yep.
It's
Is
like
this where he gets that black spear? Or did he already
yes,
have it?
yeah.
Okay, this is where he gets
The
that Wraith
Ashendera,
spear.
yeah,
Yeah.
Ashenderi, yeah. That's where he gets the black spear. He gets the memories, and he gets the Foxhead medallion. Um, the Ashendera it's a power forged weapon, but it doesn't necessarily have like abilities or anything like that. It's just a power forged
Mhm.
weapon. It's got a saying on it in the old tongue, and it's a spear that has ravens taking flight. Okay, it's and this is important later on, but the ravens taking flight on the sphere on the spear. Um, and then he gets hung, and Rand takes him down, saves his life essentially. And in the memories in his head of all the generals of old, so that he's overnight becomes this military genius. Because he's got all these great generals' memories in his head.
That was cool, especially in. Hopefully, I'm not misremembering, but especially as it progresses, like he gets those memories, but they start to blend with his, so he doesn't know where he ends and
They
such
begin
and such great general begins. Yeah, and
right,
and the writing for that is so good.
right,
So
and
good.
that's the weird thing about it all the way through. He doesn't remember like being born, but he remembers dying over and over again.
Hmm.
That's the disturbing piece to it. Is you get all these memories, and you remember the things that happened and the things that these people did and the battles they fought, but part of the trade-off for getting that knowledge is you also remember them dying in some of these battles. um and one more character that, I mean, there's so many in this book. There's because you really get the whole story of the Ale piece. You get the story of how. So okay, um, essentially Rand breaks Ryodan because breaks the shield, the barrier, the fog, and everything goes away. And he ends up capturing. What? Wait, no. Okay, so breaks Ryodan. Fog goes away. There's now he pulls the water from the ground to bring water into the waste into Ryodan. Um, and basically when he comes out of Ryodan, the he who comes from the comes with the dawn is he's coming out of the city just as the sun's coming up and the fog is going away. So he is he who comes with the dawn. Um, and of course the Shadu are they don't like this. Kaladin never goes to Ryodan. When Rand comes out of Ryodan, he has the dragons on his arms.
Yeah, he gets those tattoos. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie. As a kid, I like as a kid and younger adult, kind of want to get those tattoos. I ain't gonna lie.
You wanted
When I when I
gold dragons tattooed on your arms?
yeah, yeah. When I saw those, I'm full transparency. When I saw the artwork for like the cover art, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I want to get those. But obviously, I matured and wised up, and was like, yeah, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So,
Oop,
nope.
lost you on the stream. Hold on a minute.
Oh, let me pop back. I think I clicked the button that I shouldn't have clicked.
Whoops.
All right, I'm back.
There we are. Okay. So yeah, and that's some really cool stuff. It's also where Egwene begins her training as a dreamwalker. And she starts to develop her understanding of the world of dreams. Moiraine learns what her destiny is. And then they start the journey to come out of the waste. First, they call all the clans, the Ale clans, together. The Shadu, of course, are pissed off and they take off. They start heading for out of the waste essentially. Um, Actually, before that happens, they're both heading to this meeting place where Kaladin is going to try to announce that he's the Dragon Reborn. Um, and so there's a race to this big meeting place where all the clan chiefs are going to be. Um, and they end up going to this place. They get attacked several times, and along the way, they meet this band of traveling merchants, which at this point the only people allowed to travel through the waste are merchants. So the Ale don't mess with the
Mm.
merchants. But
Yeah.
but they meet this band of merchants, and there's two merchants in here that are really interesting. There's this tall, lean, lanky fellow and this short, stout, rotund woman. Okay. Um,
Mm.
they're both using they're two Forsaken, Asmodean and what the hell is her name? I can never remember her name, but it's Celine
Um.
basically,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
and they're using the ability to mask their appearance. Okay, so and trying to stop one's trying to stop Rand, obviously, and the other
Mhm.
one is trying to stop him, but trying to, I'm not really sure what the hell she's doing. Probably trying to bring him to the dark side type of thing. Um. So anyway, they get attacked several times, and Rand ends up capturing Asmodean.
Yeah.
And Asmodean is one of the not he's one of the weaker of the Forsaken, of the Chosen.
Oh.
So Rand captures him and shields him, basically cutting him off to the power so that he can only use a trickle of the power. And Asmodean begins to teach him. That's how he learns traveling, because Asmodean teaches him,
Yeah.
traveling, and creating the little gateways.
Mhm.
Um, Asmodean teaches him quite a bit of stuff.
Ironically, yeah.
Yeah, and
Because
that's
I'm pretty sure all the Forsaken come from the previous age, right?
right.
Or the
Well,
Chosen.
Age of Legends, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the Age of Legends. Yeah, they're all
yep,
from the previous age. They were kind of locked in Shale Ghoul
with the Dark One.
with the Dark One. Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
these are people who know, really know, and truly know what the One Power is capable of.
There's a piece that never really gets explained, um, and I speculate this. So this is just an opinion here, but I think that the seals on the Dark One's prison were tied to the Chosen, because
Oh yeah.
as the seals are broken or break, you get introduced to these Chosen.
Hmm.
And it just seemed kind of strange to me that that as these seals are breaking, these guys are popping up.
Yep.
um,
Yep. Definitely. Definitely. At least. And again, I think this is more. Well, I think it's a mix of. And this is a bit of a touch on Christianity here, but Christianity talks of seals, Book of Revelations and whatnot. So I think Robert Jordan definitely took an element of that and put that in the book as well.
oh,
Um,
absolutely. Well, and there's not like a true religion in this book, in this
that is
series,
another thing that I've really noticed. Yeah, they don't talk about
right?
a god or gods or anything like that.
Well,
There's very, I
the
mean,
creator and the wheel,
yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's as close as they get to really an organized religion, aside from like some of the cultish organizations that you kind of run into. Like I firmly believe the Children of the Light fucking cult. Those guys are whacked. But yeah, yeah, you're actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, there isn't really an established like faith. They have
right?
faith in the wheel and the creator of the wheel. That's about it. But they
Yep.
don't really mention a lot of that. So that's interesting. I wonder why he didn't do that, because you see that oftentimes in a lot of these kind of high fantasy books. There are typically a pantheon of gods. I mean, you saw it in Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
You saw it in C.S. Lewis's work. You saw it obviously Robert E. Howard's work. There's pantheons of gods in these worlds, but not in Jordan's world. Hmm.
No, and you essentially in the Wheel of Time you have the creator, which is like a completely omnipotent thing. It just made everything. The creator. It's not necessarily even referenced as being a being. Um, it's kind of like a force that's out there that created the world. And I think the battle between good and evil really is representative of all. In a way, it's all contained within this one character of Rand al'Thor, or the Dragon Reborn.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah, that's for later on. Right now, it's Rand's got to go fight the Dark One.
Yep.
So that's what he's got to start preparing for, the last battle, and go fight the Dark One. And so he goes, announces who he is, brings rain, ends up traveling, um, and at this point, it's revealed to the Ale what their past is. So the Ale are pretty much they're more or less a warrior race. I mean, Jayato, their honor code, they're fighters. They survivors. They live in this barren land. They raise their families and everything in this barren land where water is probably the most precious thing that you have. Water and shade. And lo and behold, they find out that their ancestors followed what's called the Way of the Leaf, um, which is a pacifist way. No weapons, no fighting, no killing. And that they used to be servants of the Aes Sedai. And that causes some problems for the Ale, because I mean,
Oh yeah.
they suddenly their whole world has been torn apart and turned upside down. So at that point, the Ale as a people begin to separate. You have those that follow the Dragon Reborn, see him as the Karakarn, and then those who can't accept what they learned. The bleakness begins to overtake them, and some of them
Good.
just right. Some of them just throw down their spears and walk away. Some of
Yeah.
them head into the blight. Just basically, I'm gonna go fight until they kill me, and that's gonna be that, because I'm a warrior. And others join the Shadu, thinking there's no way that this wetlander could be the Karakarn. Culloden must be the Karakarn because he's an Ale like we are. And of course, Culloden, being egged on by Savannah, his now wife, because
Right.
the older brother's dead, so now she marries the younger brother because she
Mhm.
wants to be the wife of the clan chief. Um, and by the way, a wise one, self-proclaimed wise one now as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so they decide, okay, the Dragon Reborn, or the Karakarn, is supposed to conquer the land, conquer all the people, and use the Ale to do that. So of course, Culloden and Savannah and all the Shadow cross the Dragon Wall, and that's what leads everybody
Yeah, that's
back.
what it's called, Dragon Ball.
Yeah, and that's so Rand and whoever is going to follow him are chasing after the Shadow.
Stop them from fucking bulldozing the rest of the world.
Yeah, yep, and that pretty much brings us to the end of this book.
Yeah.
So you go through all this stuff. Um, Asmodean basically pretty much gets killed. One of the other Forsaken. Matt ends up with his first relationship. So
Mm.
you have Avinda, who is a main character. and then you have a Shadow maiden named Avendra. And the Shadow maiden attaches herself to Matt. So Matt in this Avendra start a hot and heavy relationship.
Using it just to get close to assassinate Rand. I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's also, there's not necessarily in this book is it revealed, but I mean in the next book it is revealed that these three are all three important. So Rand, Matt, and Pern are all three important, not just the Dragon Reborn. That all three of them are needed.
Yeah, to
Yes,
win the fight.
right. The Dragon Reborn is obviously, the Dragon Reborn, but it's revealed that if one of the other two falls, so essentially all the Dark Friends need to do is take out one of the three and the chain is broken. Is the idea behind it. And that's kind of revealed towards it's hinted at in this book and revealed in the next book. But yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end of Dragon Reborn. Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
And again, for me, it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites because again, yeah, you start to see you really start to get a look at the stakes of what's going on.
Right.
Like keep it in mind, the Ale are a warrior race, but they don't practice what the I guess the traditional form of combat in this world is, or what we know it, because most combat in high fantasy novels typically are reminiscent of medieval combat, trebuchets, knights, and armor stuff. No, these guys fight like again, Fremen is the best way I can put it. They're they and in the descriptions they don't wear armor. They wear probably leather and cloth clothing. They have a hide buckler and spears.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they just steamroll people. Like our armies don't know what the hell to do with them, and it it's interesting because on one hand you can argue, well, that makes no tactical sense. How are they doing that? But on the other hand, it's almost like again, it's like the difference between like the Spartans and everybody else in ancient Greece. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Spartans were warriors. Period. That's what they did. They waged war. They raised warriors. That was it. Everybody else, yeah, I'm a soldier, but I also do this on the side. So I think that for me was kind of an interesting parallel, I guess, to see. Um,
Well trained and well equipped, and a lot of it with the Ale though I think is more along the line of the training. But
yes.
a well trained and well equipped army is going to perform very well against an army that's not so well trained or well equipped.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that's the Ale were very self sufficient. I mean they only took what they needed. They didn't travel around with a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't have to have pack animals and baggage trains and all that garbage. I mean,
Yeah.
when their warriors were traveling, they had what they needed with them, and then they foraged as they went. Um, and that's the difference between the military forces in the story is the rest of the military forces are pretty much what you would expect of like a medieval style military force where you've got heavy cavalry and foot soldiers and then the baggage trains because you've got to have all the people to care for the army and all that stuff. The Ale weren't like that. They traveled very light, they're very nimble, very fast. They're like a highly skilled light infantry. um and it's amazing. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. They are pretty badass. Absolutely. All right, man. I think we're done
Yeah.
at this point. Unless you got
Yeah.
any last
No,
thoughts.
for
Who
me that was fun.
so
Uh,
Well, who was your favorite character from this book? So, I mean, I know you've read it before, but this reading you haven't finished it. Who's your favorite character so far?
Gaul. Gaul so far is one of my favorites.
We didn't. Oh man, that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about what was happening back in the Two Rivers, which actually I think the majority of that happens in the
In the next book.
next book. Right. This book is where it starts, though. But we'll
Yeah.
talk about that in the next. Um,
Yeah. We'll
that's
we'll
that's
do
an
a little
interest.
backtracking.
That's an interesting choice. I mean, Gaul is definitely, um, and he's a character that stays with the story. Comes in book two. No, comes in book three. Comes in this
Book
book,
three. Yeah.
and then stays as part of the story all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because he's a good character, and he does a lot for multiple people, not just Perrin. Like I know from what I can remember, he starts out with Perrin, but I think he ends up with Rand at one point, and then leaves and goes somewhere else. Like he kind of bounces around a little bit.
well, yeah, Gaul is for the most part with Perrin all the way
Yeah.
through. But I mean, Perrin
Okay.
ends up fighting for or with the
Yeah.
Dragon Reborn. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's odd. You see the loyalties piece to it. You don't really you never really know what Gull, Bane, and Chad's true loyalties are because they never really appear to buy into the whole Karakarn, Dragon Reborn, Rand al'Thor thing. It's not that they don't buy into it, but it's not like a wholehearted they buy into it thing. Gull follows Perrin, and Bane and Chad follow wherever Gull goes. So you have this little love triangle thing going on. And because Gull's attached to Perrin, those three ale basically just go wherever Perrin goes. Um, it's yeah, it's an amazing dynamic that's going on with that. And luckily for Perrin, because I mean these people end up being kind of his saving grace many times. So really good stuff. All right, so I think that's the end for us tonight, man.
Yeah. All right.
Have a good
Well,
night,
you guys
everybody.
have a good one.
Hopefully you enjoyed the discussion on book three, The Dragon Reborn. We'll be back next time with book four.